I was standing on the stage of the grand ballroom, my son Leo beside me in his perfectly tailored vest, when my sister Jessica burst through the doors in her wedding dress, the dress she would never wear down an aisle. Her face was twisted with rage mascara streaming down her cheeks, and she was screaming at the top of her lungs. Every person in that room, every investor, every journalist, every dignitary who had come to my charity gala turned to watch as she pointed a shaking finger at me and shrieked words I will never forget. "This is my sister, everyone." The same woman who 3 weeks ago hit my 7-year-old son with her designer shoe because he accidentally spilled juice on her wedding catalog. The same woman who is now viral across the internet with the hashtag Jessica the Bully trending at #1. And this moment right here is not my revenge. It is simply the consequence of her own actions coming home to roost. If you want to hear how a single mother brought down a so-called perfect influencer and reclaimed her life, hit that like button, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment below telling me if you have ever had to stand up to toxic family members. Because this story gets wild and you not want to miss a single detail. Let me take you back to where this all started. My name is Elena, and for most of my life I was the daughter who disappointed everyone, not because I was a failure. Far from it. I was a software engineer quietly building my own startup in artificial intelligence and machine learning. But to my parents, Carol and Richard Davis, I was the problem child. Why? Because I got pregnant at 23, decided to keep my baby, and the father walked out before Leo was even born. Because I chose to build my own company instead of taking a cushy job at some Fortune 500 corporation. Because I was a single mother who wore jeans to family dinners and brought homemade cookies instead of champagne from Napa Valley. My sister Jessica, on the other hand, was everything they wanted. She was an influencer with over 2 million followers, posting perfectly curated photos of her perfect life. She had endorsement deals with luxury brands, a penthouse apartment in the city, and most importantly, she was engaged to Mark Preston, the heir to the Preston Holdings empire. My parents worshipped the ground she walked on. Every family gathering was a shrine to Jessica's accomplishments. Every conversation somehow circled back to her latest brand partnership or her upcoming wedding to Mark. I tried not to care. I really did. I had Leo, and he was my world. He was smart, funny, kind, and he loved me fiercely. We lived in a modest 2-bedroom apartment, but it was filled with laughter and love. My startup was gaining traction, and I was proud of what I was building. I did not need my parents' approval. Or, at least that is what I told myself every time my mother made a passive-aggressive comment about my life choices or my father conveniently forgot Leo's birthday. But there was a part of me, a small, stubborn part, that still hoped things would change, that maybe someday they would see me. Really see me. Not as the daughter who messed up, but as someone who was doing her best, who was succeeding on her own terms. That hope died 3 weeks ago on a Thursday afternoon. I had dropped Leo off at Jessica's place that morning. She had offered to watch him while I attended a crucial investor meeting. I was hesitant. Jessica had never been particularly warm to Leo. She found children messy and annoying, and she made no secret of it. But she was my sister, and my regular babysitter had canceled last minute. When Jessica offered, even though it sounded more like a favor, she expected me to grovel, for I accepted. I thought maybe this could be a bonding moment. Maybe she would see how wonderful Leo was. The meeting ran longer than expected. By the time I was driving back to Jessica's house, it was almost 4 in the afternoon. I had this uncomfortable feeling in my stomach, a mother's intuition that something was not right. I tried calling Jessica, but she did not pick up. I pressed down harder on the accelerator. When I pulled up to her building, I remember how beautiful it looked, all glass and steel and modern luxury. I took the elevator to her penthouse, my heart beating faster with each floor. I could hear shouting even before the doors opened. My hand was shaking as I used the spare key she had given me months ago. The moment I stepped inside, I heard Leo crying. Not just crying, sobbing. The kind of desperate, terrified sobbing that made my blood run cold. I dropped my bag and ran toward the sound. What I saw in that pristine white living room will haunt me for the rest of my life. Leo was huddled in the corner, his small body curled up, his hands protecting his head. There was a red mark on his leg already beginning to bruise. And Jessica was standing over him, her face flushed with fury, holding one of her expensive Louboutin heels in her hand like a weapon. On the coffee table, her precious wedding catalog lay, ruined pages stuck together with orange juice. Everything happened in slow motion, like my brain was processing each millisecond separately. I saw Jessica's arm rising again, that blood-red Louboutin, still gripped in her perfectly manicured fingers, her face twisted with an ugliness I had never seen before. Leo was whimpering, trying to make himself smaller, and in that fraction of a second, every instinct I had as a mother ignited like wildfire. Something primal and fierce took over something that lived deeper than thought or hesitation. I moved without deciding to move. My body crossed those few feet between us faster than I knew I could move, and my hand shot out and locked around her wrist with a force that made her gasp. I ripped that shoe from her grip so violently that I heard her joints crack, and then I was pivoting my whole body behind the motion as I hurled that designer weapon across her pristine white living room. It hit the wall with a crack that sounded like Thunder the Heel punching through the plaster and leaving a jagged crater surrounded by spiderweb fractures. The shoe dangled there for a moment, embedded in the drywall, before dropping to the floor. The sound reverberated through the apartment, through my bones, a physical punctuation mark to the line that had just been crossed. In the ringing silence that followed, I was shaking, my chest heaving, and I realized my hands were clenched into fists. Jessica spun around, her eyes wide with shock, but instead of fear or remorse, what I saw on her face was indignation, outrage that I dared to interfere. "What the hell do you think you are doing?" she spat at me, her voice shrill. I stepped between her and Leo, my whole body shaking with adrenaline. "What am I doing? What are you doing? You hit my son! You hit a 7-year-old child with a shoe." She rolled her eyes, actually rolled her eyes. "Oh, please. He ruined my catalog. Do you know how much those wedding dresses cost? I was on the phone with my wedding planner trying to fix yet another disaster, and your kid," she said the word like it was something disgusting, "comes running through here like a wild animal and destroys my things. Someone needed to teach him some discipline. God knows you never have." I could not believe what I was hearing. I knelt down and scooped Leo into my arms. He was trembling, his face buried against my shoulder, his small fingers clutching my shirt. I could feel the wetness of his tears soaking through the fabric. "If you ever touch my son again," I said, my voice low and deadly calm, "you will regret it. I promise you that." Jessica laughed. It was a cruel, mocking sound. "Get out of my house. Take your little brat and get out. You know what your problem is, Elena. You are a failed single mother who cannot handle her own life. Do not blame me because you cannot teach your kid how to behave." I stood up, Leo still in my arms, and walked toward the door, but I turned back one last time. "You are about to marry into one of the most respected families in this city," I said quietly. "A family that values integrity and character. I wonder what they would think if they knew what kind of person you really are." She smirked. "They will never believe you. Nobody will. I am Jessica Davis, the lifestyle influencer. I am the one with millions of followers and a perfect life. You are just the bitter older sister who is jealous of my success. Now get out before I call security." I left. I carried Leo down to my car, buckled him into his seat, and sat there for a moment trying to steady my breathing. Then I called my mother. I put the phone on speaker, thinking maybe, just maybe, if she heard the pain in my voice, if she understood what had happened, she would stand by me for once. "Mom," I said when she picked up, "Jessica just hit Leo. She hit him with her shoe because he spilled juice on her wedding catalog. He has a bruise on his leg." There was a pause. Then my mother's voice came through, not concerned, not horrified, but irritated. "Oh, Elena," she said with that dismissive tone I knew so well, "you are being dramatic. Jessica is under a lot of stress with the wedding coming up. Planning a wedding is incredibly difficult, you would not understand. Maybe if you spent more time disciplining Leo instead of working all hours on that little tech hobby of yours, he would know how to behave in other people's homes." I felt like I had been slapped. "Hobby, Mom," she heard him. "She left a bruise on his leg. He is 7 years old." My father's voice came through in the background. "Carol, tell Elena not to make a big deal out of this. Jessica is about to marry into the Preston family. The last thing we need is drama right before the wedding. It was probably just a little tap. Kids bruise easily." I looked at Leo in the rearview mirror. His eyes were red and swollen from crying. He was staring out the window, so small and fragile. And in that moment, something in me broke. Not in a sad way. In a liberating way, like chains I had been dragging for years suddenly shattered. "You know what," I said, my voice cold. "You are right. This is not worth making a big deal over. I will handle it myself." "That is my girl," my mother said, relief evident in her voice. "I knew you would be reasonable. Now, make sure Leo apologizes to Jessica for ruining her things." I hung up without another word. Leo's small voice came from the back seat. "Mommy, why do Aunt Jessica and Grandma and Grandpa hate me?" My heart shattered into a million pieces. I turned around to look at him, this beautiful, innocent child who had done nothing wrong. "They do not hate you, baby," I said, though my voice cracked. They just do not understand how special you are yet. But they are going to learn. I promise you that. That night, after I put Leo to bed, after I sat with him until he finally fell asleep, his small hand clutching mine, I went into my home office and made a phone call. Sarah picked up on the second ring. Sarah had been my best friend since college. She was a brilliant lawyer who specialized in family law and corporate litigation. She had seen me through my pregnancy, through the breakup with Leo's father, through every difficult moment of building my startup. She was the sister I should have had. I need your help, I said without preamble, not to sue, to destroy. There was a brief pause, then Sarah's voice came through sharp and focused. I specialize in 3 areas, Elena: family law, corporate law, and making people pay for their mistakes. Where do you want to start? Over the next hour, I told her everything. The abuse, the bruise on Leo's leg, the recording I had made on my phone of my conversation with my mother. Sarah listened, and I could hear her typing notes as I spoke. Here is what we are going to do, she said when I finished. First, I am drafting a legal notice tonight. It will inform Jessica and your parents that they are not permitted to have any unsupervised contact with Leo due to documented child abuse. It will not be a restraining order, not yet, but it will be official enough to scare them and establish a paper trail. Second, we are going after the wedding venue. Third, we are going to make sure everyone knows exactly who Jessica Davis really is. How, I asked. Sarah's voice held a note of satisfaction. Leave it to me. But I need you to trust the process and not feel guilty. This woman hurt your child and your parents enabled it. They made their choices. Now they get to live with the consequences. The next morning, Sarah sent the legal notice via certified mail and email. I knew it would send shockwaves through my family, but I did not care anymore. While that was happening, I made some calls of my own. My startup Neuralwave had just closed a significant funding round. We were developing AI-powered accessibility software for people with disabilities, and we had attracted attention from some major players in the tech industry. One of those interested parties was Greenfield Golf and Country Club, where Jessica was planning to have her wedding reception. They were looking for a technology partner to modernize their member experience. I reached out to their board of directors with a proposal: a comprehensive technology partnership worth several $1 million over 3 years. But there was one clause buried in the contract that my lawyers carefully worded. The club agreed to maintain certain ethical standards in their public events and would not host functions for individuals or organizations involved in documented instances of violence or child endangerment that could harm the club's reputation. It took some negotiation, some strategic conversations about the importance of corporate social responsibility in the modern age, but eventually they signed. The partnership would officially begin in 2 weeks, right before Jessica's wedding. While that was in motion, I turned my attention to Chloe. Chloe had been one of Jessica's bridesmaids and a so-called friend for years. But I knew from mutual acquaintances that Jessica had treated Chloe terribly, especially when it came to business. Chloe owned a small but beautiful floral design company, and Jessica had strong-armed her into providing all the flowers for the wedding at barely above cost, threatening to publicly trash her business if she did not comply. I called Chloe and introduced myself as the CEO of Neuralwave. I explained that we were planning a large corporate charity event and needed floral arrangements for a venue that would host over 300 people. I offered her triple her normal rate and a prominent credit in all event materials. Her voice nearly broke with gratitude when she accepted. When we met in person to discuss the details, I kept things professional at first. But as we talked, I mentioned casually that I was organizing this event partly because of my commitment to child welfare, particularly protecting children from abuse. I mentioned almost as an afterthought that my own son had recently been hurt by a family member, and it had opened my eyes to how important these causes were. Chloe's expression changed. She set down her coffee cup and looked at me with something like recognition. Your sister is Jessica Davis, is not she? I nodded, not sure where this was going. She took a deep breath. I should not tell you this, but I saw what happened that day. I was at Jessica's apartment dropping off sample arrangements for the wedding. I was in the entryway when it happened. I saw her hit Leo with her shoe. I saw the whole thing, and I heard what she said about him afterward. My heart was pounding. Do you have any proof? She nodded slowly. Jessica's apartment has security cameras in the common areas. The living room camera caught everything. I only know because Jessica showed me the footage later, laughing about how your kid could not take a simple lesson. She thought it was funny, Elena. She showed it to me and some of the other bridesmaids in a group chat, talking about how she put a bratty kid in his place. I felt sick to my stomach. Can you get me that footage? Chloe was quiet for a long moment. Then she pulled out her phone. I already downloaded it, she said quietly. I could not stop thinking about that little boy. About how wrong it was. I kept telling myself it was not my business, but I could not shake it. When you called me about this event and I realized who you were, I thought maybe this was a sign. She looked up at me, her eyes fierce. Jessica has treated me like garbage for years. She humiliated me in front of our entire social circle, threatened my business, and then I watched her hurt a child and laugh about it. I am done protecting people like her. She airdropped the video to my phone right there. 3 minutes and 42 seconds of crystal clear footage showing Jessica hitting Leo, his tears, her cruel words. Evidence that could not be disputed or explained away. Thank you, I said, my voice thick with emotion. You have no idea what this means. Chloe reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Take her down. The pieces were falling into place. Sarah had connections with several media outlets and bloggers who specialized in exposing influencer, fraud, and toxic behavior. We did not release the video ourselves. We made sure it found its way to the right people anonymously, along with screenshots of Jessica's group chat, where she bragged about disciplining my son. The video went live on a Friday afternoon 2 days before the wedding. Within an hour, Jessica the Bully was trending. Within 3 hours, it had been viewed over 1 million times. The comments were brutal and swift. Brands started issuing statements distancing themselves from her. Her followers, the same people who had adored her perfect life aesthetic, turned on her with shocking speed. But I was not watching social media. I was preparing for my event. The charity gala I had been planning for weeks, scheduled for the same day as Jessica's wedding. It was not revenge. It was something I had wanted to do for a long time. A fundraiser for an organization that supported children who had suffered abuse and provided resources for single parents. I had invited everyone from my investor network, potential corporate partners, and members of the media. I had also carefully and strategically sent invitations to several guests who had been on Jessica's wedding list, offering them a chance to support a worthy cause instead. The venue was beautiful. The grand ballroom downtown decorated in elegant silver and blue. There would be a silent auction, speeches from advocates and survivors, and I would be unveiling Neuralwave's new initiative to provide free technology resources to child welfare organizations. On Saturday morning, the day of both the wedding and my gala, I woke up to a call from Sarah. The venue canceled on Jessica, she said, and I could hear the smile in her voice. Greenfield cited the ethics clause in their new partnership agreement. They cannot host an event for someone currently embroiled in a viral scandal involving child abuse. Her wedding planner is apparently having a breakdown, trying to find an alternative venue, but no place decent will touch her right now. I felt a grim satisfaction. What about the Preston family? Sarah's laugh was sharp. Mark's father released a statement an hour ago. They are calling off the engagement and condemning all forms of child abuse. They threw her under the bus so fast she probably has tire marks. Mark has not even called her, just had his lawyers send a formal termination of their engagement agreement. Everything Jessica had built her identity around, her influencer career, her wealthy fiancé, her perfect life, was collapsing in real time, and I felt no guilt. Only a fierce protectiveness for my son, and a determination to show him that actions have consequences, that no one, not even family, gets to hurt you without accountability. That evening, I stood in my bedroom getting ready for the gala. Leo was with me, dressed in a little tuxedo that made him look impossibly grown up. He had been quiet all day, still processing everything that had happened over the past weeks. I knelt down in front of him and adjusted his bow tie. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" He looked at me with those serious brown eyes. "Is Aunt Jessica really bad, Mommy?" I chose my words carefully. "Aunt Jessica hurt you, and that was wrong. Nobody gets to hurt you, Leo. Nobody. And when people do bad things, they have to face the consequences. That is not being mean. That is called justice." He thought about this for a moment, then hugged me tight. "I love you, Mommy. You always protect me." "Always," I whispered into his hair. "Always." The gala was packed. Over 400 people had shown up, far more than I had anticipated. The silent auction was already raising significant funds. There were photographers, reporters, and representatives from major corporations. I saw familiar faces from the tech industry, people I respected and admired. I also saw some faces I recognized from Jessica's social circle, people who had clearly chosen to attend my event instead of supporting her. I was networking with a potential investor when my assistant came up and whispered urgently in my ear, "Your sister just showed up. She is in the lobby and she is demanding to see you." Security is holding her back, but she is causing a scene. Part of me wanted to have her escorted out immediately. But another part, the part that needed this confrontation, that needed to face her one final time, decided differently. Let her in, I said. Let her come into the ballroom. I walked up onto the small stage where the podium was set up. I picked up the microphone, my hand steady. The room gradually quieted as people realized I was about to speak. Leo was standing with Sarah off to the side of the stage, safe and protected. That is when the doors burst open and Jessica stumbled in. She was wearing her wedding dress, a gorgeous custom Vera Wang gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. But her hair was a mess, her makeup smeared from crying, and her eyes were wild with rage and desperation. The room fell into complete silence. Every person turned to watch as she stormed down the center aisle toward me, pointing a shaking finger, her voice hoarse from screaming. "You did this," she shrieked. "You destroyed everything. My wedding, my career, my life. You are a vindictive, jealous bitch, and you used your own son to ruin me. How dare you? How dare you?" I stood there calmly, the microphone in my hand, and waited for her to finish. When she finally stopped gasping for breath, I spoke. My voice was clear and carried throughout the silent ballroom. "I did not destroy anything, Jessica. I simply showed people who you really are. You hit my 7-year-old son with a shoe because he accidentally spilled juice. You bragged about it in text messages. You laughed about it with your friends. All I did was make sure the truth came to light." She opened her mouth to interrupt, but I continued, my voice gaining strength. "This is not revenge. This is consequence. You spent your entire life building an image, a perfect facade for social media. You made your living telling people how to live, what to buy, how to be happy. But behind that carefully curated feed, you were cruel. You were abusive. And when given the choice between protecting an innocent child or protecting your wedding catalog, you chose wrong." I gestured to the room around us. "These people are here tonight to support an organization that helps children who have suffered what my son suffered. Children who were hurt by people they trusted. Children who deserve justice and healing. You could have been part of that. You could have used your platform for good. Instead, you used it to build a throne made of lies, and now everyone can see it crumbling." My parents appeared from somewhere in the crowd, my father red-faced with anger, my mother pale and shaking. They pushed their way forward, trying to intervene, trying to salvage something from this disaster. "Elena, stop this right now," my father commanded in that authoritative voice he had used my whole childhood. "You are embarrassing this entire family." I looked at him, at my mother, at Jessica, standing there in her ruined wedding dress, and I felt nothing but cold clarity. "No," I said simply, "you embarrassed yourselves. You chose to protect an abuser over an innocent child. You chose image over integrity. You chose her over me, over Leo, over basic human decency. And now you are all facing the consequences of those choices." I turned to the security guards who had quietly moved closer. "Please escort these 3 out of the building. They are not welcome at this event." My mother started crying, reaching out toward me. "Elena, please. We can work this out. We are family." "Family protects each other," I said, my voice breaking slightly for the first time. "Family does not enable abuse. Family does not make excuses for cruelty. You stopped being my family the moment you asked me to let this go for the sake of convenience." As security gently but firmly led them out, the room remained silent. Then slowly someone started clapping. Then another person. Then another. Within moments, the entire ballroom was applauding. Not because they enjoyed watching a family implode, but because they understood what this moment represented. Standing up, setting boundaries, refusing to accept abuse as the price of keeping peace. I set down the microphone, my hands shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Sarah was suddenly beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Leo came running up and hugged my legs. I picked him up, even though he was getting too big for that, and held him close. "You did good, Mom," he whispered in my ear. The rest of the gala was a success. We raised over $2 million for the children's organization. I gave a speech later that night, a real one, about the importance of protecting children and believing survivors. The press coverage was overwhelmingly positive. Several major news outlets picked up the story not as a scandal piece, but as a story about accountability and corporate social responsibility. In the days that followed, Jessica's life continued its downward spiral. She lost all her brand partnerships. Her social media accounts, which she had eventually reopened, were flooded with criticism. She had to sell her penthouse to cover debts. The Preston family made it clear she was not welcome anywhere near their social circles. Even her friends, the ones who had enabled and encouraged her behavior, quietly distanced themselves, afraid of being associated with her tarnished reputation. My parents tried to reach out several times. My mother sent flowers with a note that said we should talk. My father left voicemails insisting that I was being unreasonable, but I did not respond. I had said everything I needed to say. Sarah handled all communication, sending firm but professional messages, making it clear that unless they were prepared to attend family therapy and demonstrate genuine accountability, there would be no relationship. Several months passed. Leo started seeing a child therapist to help him process what had happened. He was doing well, his nightmares had stopped, and he was back to being the happy, energetic kid I knew. Neural Wave was thriving. The publicity from the gala, while not the reason I had organized it, had brought significant attention to our company. We closed 2 major partnerships and expanded our team. I was building the life I had always wanted on my own terms without constantly seeking validation from people who would never give it. One afternoon in late spring, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting on the envelope was shaky, unpracticed. It was from Jessica. I almost threw it away without opening it, but something made me pause. I sat down at my kitchen table, Leo at school, and carefully opened it. The letter was 4 pages long, handwritten with crossed-out words and tear stains. It was not asking for forgiveness. It was not making excuses. It was simply an acknowledgement. She wrote about how she had started therapy, how she was finally confronting her own issues, her obsession with image, her need for validation, her cruelty. She wrote about how she understood now what she had done to Leo, how there was no justification, no excuse. She wrote that she knew she had destroyed her own life, but more importantly, she had hurt an innocent child, and that was something she would have to live with forever. The last paragraph said, "I do not expect you to forgive me. I do not deserve your forgiveness. But I want you to know that Leo deserves every protection and every bit of love you give him. I hope he never has to experience cruelty again, especially from someone who should have known better. I am sorry, Elena, not because I got caught, but because I finally understand what I took from you and from him. I understand now what real family means, and I failed at being it." I read the letter 3 times. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Not forgiveness, not yet, maybe, never, but something like closure. Understanding that people could change even if that change came too late to repair what was broken. I folded the letter carefully and put it in a box in my closet. I did not respond, but I did not throw it away either. It was evidence of accountability, and that mattered. A few weeks later, Mark Preston reached out through his assistant. He wanted to meet for coffee. I was hesitant but curious. We met at a quiet cafe downtown on a Tuesday morning. He looked different from the photos I had seen in society magazines, less polished, more human. He apologized immediately for not seeing Jessica's true nature sooner, for not protecting Leo when it mattered. He explained that his family's reaction had been swift and harsh but necessary. Then he surprised me. "I have been following Neural Wave," he said. "What you are building is impressive. My family's foundation is looking to invest in technology companies that have a social impact mission. I would like to discuss a potential partnership, not as a favor or an apology, but as a legitimate business opportunity." I considered his offer carefully. I did not need his money. Neural Wave was doing well on its own. But the Preston Foundation had connections and resources that could help us scale our impact significantly. After several meetings with my team and our lawyers, we structured a partnership that felt right. It was professional, ethical, and beneficial to the children we were trying to help. 1 year after that terrible Thursday afternoon when I walked into Jessica's apartment and saw my son being hurt, I stood in the living room of my new home. It was not a mansion, but it was beautiful, and it was ours. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, a big backyard where Leo could play, a home office where I could work. I had just signed the papers that morning. Leo came running in from the backyard, grass stains on his knees, a huge smile on his face. "Mom, can we get a dog now? You promised when we got a house we could get a dog." I laughed, ruffling his hair. "Yes, buddy. We can start looking at shelters this weekend." He hugged me tight, then ran back outside to play. I watched him through the window, this resilient, beautiful kid who had been through so much but was still so full of joy and light. I thought about Jessica living in a small apartment across town, working a regular job for the first time in her adult life, supposedly still in therapy. I thought about my parents who had sent several more letters, increasingly desperate but still unable to fully take accountability without adding justifications and excuses. I thought about the year that had passed, the battles fought, the boundaries set, the life reclaimed. I did not forgive them. Maybe someday I would, or maybe I would not. But I realized that forgiveness was not the point. The point was that I had protected my son. I had shown him that his safety mattered more than keeping peace. I had taught him that people who hurt you do not get to stay in your life just because they share your DNA. I had built a life where we were valued, respected, and safe. The storm had passed, the laughter that once covered cruelty had been silenced, and in its place was something better, something real. Something we had built ourselves brick by brick with truth and courage and love. My phone buzzed with a notification. Sarah was texting. The final partnership papers with the Preston Foundation were signed. Neuralwave's Child Protection Initiative was officially fully funded for the next 5 years. I smiled, typing back a quick thank you. Then I put my phone down and walked outside to where Leo was examining a butterfly that had landed on a flower. "Hey, Mom," he called out. "Did you know butterflies can remember being caterpillars?" My teacher told us today. I sat down on the grass next to him. "Really, that is pretty amazing." "Yeah," he said thoughtfully. "They transform into something totally different, but they still remember where they came from. That is kind of cool." I pulled him close. "It is very cool, buddy. It means you can change and grow, but still honor your story. Still remember what made you strong." He looked up at me with those wise brown eyes. "Like you did." "Like I did," I confirmed. We sat there together as the sun started to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The storm was over. The perfect facade had crumbled, and in the ruins we had built something better. Something real. Something ours. Here is what I learned from all of this. You do not owe anyone your silence in the face of abuse. You do not owe anyone your child's safety for the sake of family harmony. You do not owe anyone forgiveness that has not been earned through genuine accountability and change. And most importantly, you are not vindictive for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for demanding respect. You are not the problem for refusing to pretend everything is fine when someone has crossed a line that should never be crossed. Standing up for yourself and your loved ones is not revenge. It is not drama. It is not being difficult. It is called having a backbone. It is called protecting what matters. It is called refusing to let other people's toxicity define your worth or dictate your life. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply let people experience the natural consequences of their own actions, step back and watch their house of cards collapse under the weight of their own choices. So I want to ask you, have you ever had to stand up to someone everyone else protected? Have you ever been the black sheep for refusing to keep the peace? Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and doing what is right? Drop your story in the comments below. Let us support each other in breaking the cycle of enabling toxic behavior. And if this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because standing up to toxicity is a journey we all need to take sometimes, and we do not have to do it alone.